February 2nd, 1945. A secret dinner. Two of the most powerful military commanders of World War II. No witnesses. No staff. No escape. What happened behind those closed doors that night would never appear in official records. Never be written. In memoirs. Never be spoken of again. But in that room, the Western Alliance came within seconds of complete collapse. Two men, one confrontation, and a secret that could have changed the course of history. This is the story of the night Dwight Eisenhower and Bernard Montgomery almost destroyed everything. January 28, 1945. Supreme Headquarters, Versailles. General Walter Bedell Smith entered Eisenhower's office carrying a message that made the Supreme Commander's blood run cold. Field Marshal Montgomery was requesting a private dinner. Just the two of them. No witnesses. Eisenhower's hand gripped the paper harder than necessary. This wasn't an invitation. It was a challenge. "Do you want me to decline?" Smith asked, watching his commander's face carefully. The smart move was obvious. Say no. Keep Montgomery at arm's length. Manage him through official channels where everything was documented, controlled, sanitized. For 3 years, Eisenhower had done exactly that, absorbing Montgomery's insults. His contempt, his barely concealed belief that American commanders were amateurs playing at war. But Eisenhower was exhausted. Exhausted from the diplomatic games. Exhausted from defending Montgomery to furious American generals. Exhausted from swallowing his pride while Montgomery took credit for American victories. "No," Eisenhower said finally. "I'll meet with him." Smith looked doubtful. He knew what neither man was saying aloud. This dinner was dangerous. Two powerful egos. 3 years of accumulated resentment. No audience to enforce civility. What could possibly go wrong? What neither man knew was that this private dinner would become the most explosive confrontation of the entire war. A night where carefully maintained facades would shatter. Where diplomatic language would give way to raw fury. Where two allied commanders would come within seconds of actual violence. The trap was set. And Eisenhower had just walked into it. February 2nd, 1945, 7 p.m. A small chateau outside Brussels. Eisenhower arrived alone, carrying a bottle of wine as a peace offering. Montgomery met him at the door with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Good of you to come, I thought. It was time we talked frankly." The word hung in the air like a threat. The dinner started cordially. Too cordially. Both men were circling, watching, waiting. The conversation was professional, safe, until Montgomery brought up the battle of the Bulge. "Once I took command of the northern sector, we were able to stabilize the line." Eisenhower set down his fork carefully. There it was. Montgomery was rewriting history, casting himself as the savior of the incompetent Americans. The situation was stabilized by multiple commanders, Eisenhower said evenly. Montgomery waved this away dismissively. Yes, but the strategic crisis was in the north. That's where British command made the difference. Eisenhower felt his jaw tighten. "Monty, you commanded 2 American armies for 3 weeks during an emergency. That doesn't make you the savior of the American army." Montgomery smiled, patronizing, condescending. "Of course not, Ike. I'm simply saying that when things got difficult, having experienced command proved valuable." The implication was crystal clear. When Americans got in trouble, they needed British leadership to bail them out. Eisenhower took a sip of wine. His hand was shaking slightly, not from fear. From rage carefully controlled. "What exactly did you want to discuss tonight, Monty?" Montgomery leaned back. "Strategy, the way forward." And then he began what would become a catastrophic miscalculation. Montgomery launched into his prepared lecture. criticizing Eisenhower's broad front strategy, demanding concentrated forces under his command, treating the Supreme Commander like an incompetent student. Then he mentioned Market Garden, his disastrous September 1944 offensive that cost thousands of lives. Market Garden was 90% successful. Montgomery claimed that something snapped inside Eisenhower. It was a complete failure, Eisenhower interrupted, his voice hard now. We lost an entire airborne division and gained nothing. Montgomery stood up abruptly. I will not sit here and have my operational record criticized by... He stopped himself, but not before Eisenhower understood what he was about to say. By someone who's never commanded troops in combat. Eisenhower stood as well, walking around the table until he was inches from Montgomery's face. By who, Monty? By your superior officer? Finish the sentence. By someone who doesn't understand operational warfare the way I do. There it was. The fundamental contempt Montgomery had been hiding for months. Eisenhower's voice dropped to a deadly whisper. Sit down. Montgomery didn't move. I said sit down. Montgomery sat slowly, defiantly. Eisenhower remained standing, looming over him. Let me explain something to you. Something I should have explained a long time ago. Eisenhower leaned forward, hands on the table. You might be brilliant, Monty. You might be a tactical genius. But you are poison to this alliance. Montgomery's face went pale. And if you don't change, I will relieve you of command. I don't care what Churchill says. I will fire you and deal with the political fallout. You wouldn't dare. Try me. The room was electric with tension. Montgomery stood abruptly, his chair scraping violently across the floor. I will report this conversation to the Prime Minister. Report whatever you want, Eisenhower shot back. Churchill can't protect you. If I decide you're undermining Allied operations... Montgomery took a step toward Eisenhower. Both men stood face to face, inches apart. Montgomery's fists were clenched. Eisenhower's posture was rigid. Outside, Eisenhower's driver heard raised voices. He briefly considered intervening. He had no idea that inside, two of the most powerful commanders in the Allied army were seconds away from actual physical violence. You're making a mistake, Montgomery said, his voice low and threatening. The only mistake I've made is tolerating your behavior for this long. Montgomery's hand moved slightly. Eisenhower saw it. For a fraction of a second, both men realized how close they were to crossing a line that could never be uncrossed. A physical confrontation that would destroy the Western Alliance. Montgomery seemed to realize this first. He took a half step back. Then something unexpected happened. Montgomery's voice changed, less angry, more bitter. You're right, he said quietly. I am poison to this alliance. I know that. But I can't stop. What followed was a confession that shocked Eisenhower. Montgomery admitted everything, his desperate fight to preserve British prestige, his fear of Britain's declining power, his recognition that every battle he fought with Eisenhower was accelerating Britain's fall rather than preventing it. The anger drained from the room. What replaced it was something neither man expected: understanding. The dinner that almost destroyed the Allied command ended with a handshake. Not warm, not friendly, but an understanding between two commanders who finally saw each other clearly. They agreed to work together. Montgomery would moderate his behavior. Eisenhower would treat him with respect. And most importantly, this conversation would stay secret forever. Neither man ever wrote about it. No staff officers leaked details. Official histories ignored it completely, but it changed everything. Montgomery stopped undermining Eisenhower. The Rhine crossing succeeded. The war ended with the alliance intact. Years later, when asked about Montgomery, Eisenhower gave a diplomatic answer. But he added one revealing line. Some conversations between commanders need to stay private. Montgomery was equally cryptic. Eisenhower was tougher than people gave him credit for. I learned that the hard way. What happened in that chateau on February 2, 1945? Two men who hated each other found a way to save the alliance through brutal honesty. They threatened each other's careers. They said things that could never be unsaid. They came within seconds of violence. And then they walked away, understanding exactly where they stood. Sometimes in war, that's all you need. The secret dinner. A confrontation that never officially happened. The night the Allied command almost collapsed. Now you know the truth.